So ESG stands for literally environment, social, and governance. That there are three different factors that you must look at in terms of what a company does. How does it impact the environment? How does it behave as a social person? How does it impact society? And also, how does it impact its own staff and its own colleagues who work for the company? And then the governance. How is the company's governance structure run in terms of compliance, legal reporting, in terms of board function, in terms of treatment of minorities, in terms of being a fair enterprise? So what is the governance structure of an entity? So ESG are three of the three of the cornerstones or the pillars of a new way of looking at how companies function as entities within a society these days. ESG is also known by other ways or parts of it. It can be also called sustainable investing or responsible investing or impact investing. So this is all phraseology that is evolving. Some of it encompasses everything. So ESG could be responsible investing, where you're trying to say, okay, is the company being responsible to the environment, responsible to society, responsible to its minority shareholders and the government and society at large in general by the sort of the G factor of governance. Or you can say, I want to measure only how is this company polluting a river or hurting the air or not polluting the river, as the case may be. So therefore that may be impact investing. So, and then you could say also, I wanted it to be sustainable. So what sustainable terms could be of raw material. Is it using packaging material that can be recycled? So some of these things look at certain verticals within an E, S, and G, and some of these phrases are used to represent the whole thing. In some case, responsible investing is sort of the umbrella, if you will, at all ESG factors are being looked at. So the climate crisis has had a big debate, and of course now there's a huge bunch of UN reports around it. The basic thesis being that humans have caused increased greenhouse gas emissions, of which carbon dioxide is one of the worst. And we are responsible for that since the creation of the steam engine. And effectively about 90% plus of all greenhouse gas emissions that have been emitted since the steam engine was invented nearly 300 or 250 years ago have come from the developed world. And because of this increased carbon dioxide, you've got an issue with the earth warming up. And because the earth is warming up, there's this climate change. Oceans are rising. Monsoons can be much more intense in terms of flooding in certain areas and certain times of the year, and not so much spread out, etc. So this climate haphazard, there's climate change. Is it real? Yeah, it's real. I mean, the Earth is a planet within a much larger, complex solar system. I'm not a climate scientist, but I have the common sense, I guess, and we've all studied this somewhere in our books in geography, is that the entire universe is actually changing. So yeah, even the way the Earth orbits the sun is changing. And just that natural orbit of the way the Earth goes around the sun is also going to cause some kind of global warming. Because imagine if I have my finger and I keep on moving it towards a light. And as I get closer to the light, the finger is going to get warmer. And at some point in time, when it touches a light, I'm going to start screaming because it'll burn. So the Earth, whether we like it or not, the whole solar system is moving in a particular direction where about, I think it was 5 million years from now, the Earth as we know it will no longer exist because of the natural revolution and the orbit around the sun, there will be an issue of my finger touching, getting too hot and I'll go, ouch. So there is a natural cycle that is causing climate change. The big debate has been, I shouldn't say big debate because there is no debate. I never hear debates on this. It's just taken as a one-sided view. The view is that humans are causing climate change. I think more than climate change, environmental impact is real. I don't know whether, and many people don't really may not believe that climate change is caused by us humans. But we all know that when we get polluted water, when we get a bad ocean, a bad seafront, or bad air, we know the factory next door, the factory down the lane caused it. So if we address those problems, those are real environmental problems, which of course help the bigger problem of climate change. I think if we look at it that way, yes, climate change is for real because environmental issues are for real, and whatever we bring to the environment effectively has an impact on the climate. Yeah, so it goes back to, it used to be that a company was expected to only focus on one thing called P, the profit. What is my net profit after tax? What they call the bottom line. And now people talk about the triple bottom line or the triple P. So planet, people, and profit. So in the 1970s, it became very fashionable for economists to start writing theories that the sole reason that a company exists is to make money. But that was not true. If you look at the history of India, look at how India grew under Prime Minister Nehru after independence. They gave licenses to the Tatas, the Birlas, the automobile companies, who built huge factory townships. So the Birlas built an aluminum factory in Renukut. The Tatas built a steel factory in Jamshedpur. And when I used to visit those townships, it was amazing. I mean, as recently as the mid-1990s, those townships ran everything. The factory in Renukut not only was responsible for manufacturing aluminum, but it ran the water system, it ran the school, it ran the gardens, it ran the parks, it ran the housing, it had the cinema, and those days there was no multiplex with, good comfortable seats, but it ran everything effectively, right? So it looked after the whole community. Its workers were given housing, there were playgrounds, there were cricket fields, everything. You go to Jamshedpur, I remember I went there in 94, there was no plastic bottles in those days, or a lot less if I remember correctly. And I was feeling very thirsty while at the factory visit. And, I wanted to drink water, but I was very scared, being a Bombay person, whether if I drink water in Jamshedpur, what will happen to my stomach? And I do have a very fragile immune system. So the plant manager realized that I was nervous, and he said, no, you can drink the water from this tap. And I said, really? From the tap? I don't even drink water from the tap in Bombay. He said, no, this is Jamshedpur. We run the water over here. You can drink the tap. And I drank from the tap, and it was fine. So, they ran everything, right? And society at that time and corporates had this wonderful coexistence that you work for me, for the Tatas, for the Birlas, you're lifelong. You look after me, I look after you. Somewhere in the 1990s, and we're probably partly responsible for that because we were lobbying for all this corporate change action and, having us focused more and become more westernized, probably went too westernized and too capitalist. I guess companies stopped worrying about their staff. They stopped worrying about society around them. They started focusing because of research analysts and investment bankers. Again, you can blame that on quantum because we kind of created that enterprise, I guess, of not of quarterly profits, but of research reports. Everyone started focusing on quarterly reports, on quarterly numbers. So the virus of Wall Street of looking at quarterly numbers kind of got imported into India, sadly. And you had this break and this sort of complete disconnect where companies now said, I need to earn a quarterly profit so that my share price looks good. If my share price looks good, I as a CEO get these outsized bonuses, outsized salaries, outsized ESOPs. And with my outsized wealth, I can do whatever I want to the world. And if I have to cut a few staff along the way, so be it. So you had this new kind of equation for many decades in India and for many, many more decades in the Western world, where there was a disconnect between what the company's objectives were. It became only that single P, profit, and they didn't really care about the planet and they didn't really care about the people. So there's a massive revival now to go back to what capitalism was supposed to be. The capitalist society that's described to us today is not what was thought of even by John Maynard Keynes or by Adam Smith. They thought about a capitalist society and a government which integrates everything with companies and societies, not what we're seeing today. So now there's kind of a reversion to that, a reversal rather, to that mean, if you will. Data providers love to measure things. That's what they do. They give data, they provide data, then they can give you a measurement and charge you for it. So you can measure a firm on many things. For example, we could measure what is quantum's impact on the environment. Even though we're not a factory, we consume electricity. We're shooting a video right now. There's charging going on. We're using power. We can work out what is our power bill for the full year. We know the cost of power. So we know how many units of power we've consumed. We know how much paper we're using every year. We can work out what that paper cost in terms of carbon footprint, how many trees were knocked down to make that paper. So we can make a measurement in some sense, even though we're not a factory, even though you don't think of us as a bad polluting company, we're doing some harm to the environment from what we're doing. And of course, if you're a company that is using water to make power, for example, all power companies need a huge amount of water to cool all the pipes, to cool the heating systems in the power plant. You can measure how much water they need. But where's the water coming from? Well, it's not coming necessarily, from the sky. It's coming from dams, it's coming from the ground, from the earth. So we're sucking up water. You can measure things. And when you measure them, you can then say, okay, there's a standard that is okay and acceptable, and recognize that. And this is too high, and the best in class does this. And everyone kind of gravitates towards the best of class, metrics, and tries to find ways to get there. They make a conscious decision to get there, as opposed to who's counting, who cares, who's checking. So now if you begin to shame quantum by saying, hey, for a company of your size, you're using too much power. So maybe we start to shut the lights in the office more often and try to consume less power, right? Maybe you find that the power plant that is using a lot of water is using excessive water compared to a power plant 200 miles away, 300 kilometers away. So maybe you get them to say, hey, listen, you're using too much power, too much water. Look at the power plant 200 miles away, 300 kilometers away. They're using a lot less water because they're doing this. Why don't you spend money to implement that? So there are ways to bring that E, once you measure it, into some kind of a range which becomes acceptable to society, acceptable to regulators. On the social side, the obvious thing is the role of women. The role of women in the board, the role of women in a company. Are they paid the same? Are they treated the same? Is there an expectation, and this is also true in the Western world for all their advancement, that despite the fact that women tend to do the same work as men in the West, they tend to get paid 20 to 30% lower than what a man gets paid for the same job. So gender inequality and moving towards gender equality. Are you using child labor? Are you exploiting people? Are you being mean to them? Are you not giving them comfortable work surroundings? That's all the S factor. And you can measure all these things, right? These are all very, very sort of measurable. Can you give me databases on salary for women, salary for men for doing the same work? And you can compare them, and you can compare across sectors and companies. And G, of course, is governance. How do you treat? So right from your regulatory filings, are you filing on time? Are you doing the right things? Have you broken some laws? Have you filed your taxes on time? Are you treating minority shareholders who may have only 2 shares in a company versus a majority shareholder who may own 80% of a company shares? Are you treating them the same way, right? So all of these can be measured, and databases exist for all of these things. Quantum took the path in 2013-14 that we should build our own databases. So while there are service providers we asked for sample reports on companies that we know have poor, for example, governance. We know their governance is pathetic, governance is poor, and we're not very likely to give them a high rating and therefore not buy their shares in the quantum mutual fund portfolios. And when we asked for those sample reports, we got glowing reports from them because these are big companies. And just because they're big doesn't mean they must get a high number in our view. So we decided, okay, what, we don't trust the external service providers, let's just build our own team. So we built databases on companies' annual reports in the late 1980s and early 90s when we started Quantum. And then we began building databases of ESG from 2014 onwards. So greenwashing is basically it's lying to people. That's really what it is. So ESG has become a big buzzword. Sustainable investing, impact investing, responsible investing. So you've had the likes of Larry Fink of BlackRock, the largest fund manager in the world. His annual report talks about doing wonderful things in society and, kind of being one with the universe and very altruistic in their approach. And the key question to really ask is, what are they actually doing when they manage your money? So if Quantum says that we are following an ESG standard, are we really doing that? When Mr. Larry Fink of BlackRock, which is a $6 trillion company in terms of assets under management, again, put that in perspective, that's more than twice of India's total GDP. When they say they're doing, when they're doing ESG stuff, are they actually doing it or are they greenwashing? So greenwashing is like, okay, I'm telling you something, I put a label on it, and you as a buyer feel happy that, Tika, I got this label and I've done what I had to do, and yet the actual work is not getting done. So it's green wishing. You've taken this label and you've assumed that the quantum fund is actually an ESG fund and you're feeling very good about life and you're doing your bit for society, when actually quantum is buying all rubbish shares and doesn't really even care about ESG and has just made you feel happy. So it's basically misleading. And recognize that the field of finance is built on misleading. People have become wealthy in finance not by delivering end product that is useful for the consumer. People have become rich in the field of finance by selling junk, useless, toxic product to their customers, right? And that's why greenwashing and green wishing and green labeling could be another way just to collect money from your wallet and give you something which is totally not what you thought you were buying. We saw that with the BRIC story in India. So you had this big story which Goldman Sachs came out with, one of the best piece of fiction, if you ever want to read it, is about Brazil, Russia, India, and China becoming great superpowers of the world. Maybe China gets somebody economically for a while, possibly, etc. But look at where the other three are: Brazil, Russia, India, not superpowers of the world. We may be bigger nations in GDP, but it takes a lot more to be a relevant superpower in the world in some sense. So, but they collected a lot of money based upon these BRIC stories about investing in these foreign, not only Goldman Sachs, but everyone. We all kind of made that, including Quantum. We sell Indian product to the Western world. So we also were a kind of a beneficiary of that wave of BRIC. But I hope for our clients' perspective, we did calm them and tell them the risks of India. And we'd like to calm and tell our clients about the risks or the difficulties of implementing many of these green wishing strategies, if you will, or on the ESG side. Quantum has been using what we call an integrity screen, which nowadays has been converted to be called governance. So the integrity screen we had before was kind of pretty simple, which was, do we trust managements when we invest with them? Do we trust them to look after minority investors? Or are they only going to do things that are good for the founding family, what we call promoters? Are they only going to work for them or also for the minorities? So what is the focus of the companies, of the company's large shareholders? And we've had that screen for 25 years now. And that's now been called governance. So we've evolved into it. But E and S are new to us. G was always there. S we used to worry about to some extent, but never had a proper formal scoring structure. In 2014 onwards, we got a proper formal structure where we score and evaluate the E, S, and the G of every single company in which we invest and which we plan to invest in. So since 2014, as indicated, we built a team that does ESG, built a database, and we use the database really in three different ways. So we have the existing long-term equity value fund, and we had this integrity screen of G around it all the time that was there. Now we have an ENS element in it too. So the portfolio is now being checked to see whether companies that are there, do they follow certain ESG practices or not? And if the ESG score is above a certain minimum, that's nice. If the ESG score is below a certain minimum, we try to explain to the managements who are certainly getting more aware about it on how and why they could improve their ESG score. Or effectively ask them, what are you doing to make your ESG score a little better? And if we like that answer, we're willing to give them 2, 3, 4 years time to get better on E, S, and G, wherever they feel are the gaps. So that's one way we use the ESG database of Quantum. The other way is that in July 2019, last year, we launched a fund in India called the Quantum India ESG Fund. And the Quantum India ESG Fund is, we built a database of companies on ESG. We don't care what the PE ratio, what the price to book ratio, what the price to cash flow ratio, what the dividend yield is of the company. If it's got a high ESG score, we'll build a portfolio and give it a high weight in that portfolio. If it's got a low ESG score, we'll give it a much lower weight. If it's got a bad ESG score, it'll not even be in the portfolio. So beyond a certain cutoff point, we take the companies in the database, 40, 50 of them, and we build a portfolio around that, entirely on the ESG score, irrespective and totally ignoring whether it's an PE is low, PE is high, multiples, EPS, we don't care about that. Just tell me the ESG score. If it's good, you get a high weight, medium, you get a medium weight, low, you get a low weight. If it's a bad ESG score, you're not in the portfolio. So that's what we do. So step one on the database, look at the value fund. If you like something, if you already have it, make sure it's got a certain minimum score to remain. Step two, build a portfolio based purely on ESG. And the third one is, which is what work in progress, haven't yet launched it. We've tied up with a group from Tata. They're no longer with the Tata group, and it's called eCube, and we're doing a partnership with them to launch a new fund where we invest in companies which are listed, small cap, mid cap. They have poor ESG, but they wish to get better, and they want to know how to get better. So we provide them with the capital. And our partners from the ex-Tata Group partners, they will sit on the boards and they'll fix the companies. So that's how we're using the database in 3 different ways.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.